Hi, my name's Alex Koiter. We are currently in the Environmental Science Laboratories here at Brandon University. The Environmental Science Lab provides cutting edge equipment to basically look at a range of environmental questions, issues, and concerns. This lab has capabilities of looking at more contemporary environmental issues, but also the capacity to look at past environments as well. So, what were the environments like thousands of years ago, or potentially even millions of years ago? The overall goal of studying environmental science is basically to provide a path forward as our society continues to grow in both population numbers. It presents a number of environmental challenges, and we're here to help address those and try to find a sustainable way forward. So this lab in particular does a lot of work looking at both soil and water quality, particularly as it's tied to agriculture. We are in the prairies, right? If we look out our window here at the university, we don't have to look very far before we see lots of farms. And so a lot of the work is looking at things like carbon sequestration, both from a soil quality perspective, but also from a climate perspective. Soils have a lot of potential to store a lot of carbon, and that's not only good for our climate, but it's also good for our crop productions as well. We also are interested in looking at water quality. So we are looking at nutrient loss from agricultural regions. So we are investigating losses of phosphorus and nitrogen. And this is primarily done to address concerns over water quality, especially if we look at some of the concerns surrounding Lake Winnipeg and the issues surrounding eutrophication, which are primarily driven by nutrient loading, which agriculture and the soils are one source of those nutrients. We have a suite of instruments that are able to look at things like organic matter, organic carbon content, nitrogen, phosphorus, and we also have a microscopy suite, which is pretty neat for looking at things like pollen, and it helps us look at past environmental records, what types of vegetation were in certain locations in the past. So this machine here, this is our ICP OES. That is inductively coupled plasma optical emission spectroscopy. It's a bit of a mouthful, but in essence, what this instrument does, it allows us to take an environmental sample, such as a soil sample, and it allows us to look at the geochemistry of that sample. So it allows us to see, well, how much calcium, how much potassium, how much trace metal there may be in a sample. To do cutting edge research, we need cutting edge instruments, and that's what we have here. Having this and having it centrally located allows people from different disciplines to come in here and work together at that interdisciplinary nature that really produces some really interesting and innovative solutions to very complicated environmental problems. This lab is funded through a range of different sources. It was initially set up through the Canadian Innovation Fund, which purchased most of this equipment, and its general maintenance and research projects are funded through a whole range of different groups, such as federal grants, provincial grants, partnerships with industry, partnerships with NGOs, and quite a wide range. Dr. McGonigal currently has a project looking at the role of mycorrhizal fungi on crop productivity and crop quality. This really neat fungus plant association provides a lot of benefits to both the plant itself, but also agricultural production. And so there's a real big interest in seeing how this fungal plant association can really benefit through times of drought and other environmental stressors. There's also projects looking at phosphorus runoff from agricultural landscapes, looking at cattle grazing in riparian areas, and we were really trying to quantify, well, what is the phosphorus concentrations and distribution in these riparian areas, which are right next to these water courses, and how do they respond to agricultural uses such as grazing. There is also projects looking at past environments. Dr. Greenwood has a project in Australia looking at what did these landscapes look like thousands of years ago. There is increasing concerns over things like microplastics in our environment. And so agriculture, like many other industries, it uses plastics, and they are widespread, and they can enter into the soil environment, and it raises questions as to, well, what impacts do those plastics have on the soil environment and crop production? What happens to the soils once they enter into this agro ecosystem? How do they degrade? How do they move? Where do they go? How long do they persist? The fundamental research we do here in the Environmental Science Lab does have direct applications for some of our end users. And in particular, this lab has a strong focus on agricultural production. And so a lot of the stuff we are working on ultimately ends up in the hands of the producers in terms of best management practices. And that's all to basically ensure the long-term sustainability of these farms, both from a production side, but also from an environmental side as well. We collaborate with a wide range of different groups. We certainly collaborate with our colleagues at Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada. We've had projects working with the Lake Winnipeg Basin Fund, looking at issues of phosphorus and nitrogen. We've also had projects working with more local groups to address things like flooding, excessive soil erosion, sedimentation, and those types of concerns as well. One of the really neat things about the Environmental Science Lab, environmental sciences in general, is by its nature is very multi or interdisciplinary in nature. We certainly collaborate with the geology department, geography, biology, chemistry. They all make up environmental science. There is lots of opportunities to participate in research, which often takes place here in the Environmental Science Laboratory. So faculty have research projects. They often hire summer research assistants, and so they have an opportunity to gain skills both, working with these instruments, but also working with the data that they produce. There's also lots of opportunities for graduate students to use these facilities for their own research projects. And in particular, this Environmental Science Lab is well suited for the MELS program, or the Master in Environmental and Life Sciences graduate program here at Brandon University. They end up with the technical skills to both maintain, operate, calibrate, clean all this instrumentation in here. All right, and those skills are in demand. There is also all the data that all these fantastic instruments provide that need to be looked at. So it provides opportunities for learning about statistics and summarizing data. And then, of course, the next step is, well, what does all this mean? What are the practical applications of the results and knowledge that is generated from the Environmental Science Lab? How will this be used by governments, by industry, and by the public?